Hi, everyone. And so let's get into this topic. Now, you've already seen the title, so let's talk about it. One of the first things that I wish that I would have asked my husband is, do you wash dishes? Now, I know that may not seem like a big deal to some people, but it actually is quite a big deal. If your significant other, the person that you are thinking about spending the rest of your life with, is not really interested in domestic responsibilities, you know what that means, right? It's all going to fall on you. And then what ends up happening is that you have a household that is falling apart because you're the only one washing the dishes. And if you feel like you want your partner to participate in something like that, but he won't, or she won't, because this can go either way, what will end up happening is that you will begin to resent them. You'll begin to think, wow, here I am, here we are in this partnership, yet it doesn't feel like one. So that's one of the main questions that I wish I would have asked my husband from the very beginning. Do you wash dishes? And thank God he does. But this is just so that if you're right now in a situation where you know that you're with someone that you love, that you want to spend the rest of your life with, then you might want to ask him or her, do they wash dishes? Eek. Number 2, children. Do you want to have children? How many children do you want to have? Now, I do remember talking to my husband, now boyfriend then, about children, but it was very brief. I don't remember talking to him about the number of children that I wanted to have. I don't remember him telling me the number of children that he wanted to have. And so this is something that you really, really want to get into. Now, the one thing that I will say is that as much as you can talk about the number of children that you want to have, how you want to raise your children, that sort of thing, there are a lot of things, I would say, just in my personal experience, that begin to change once you start having children. So in your mind, you might be thinking, I want this, I want that, this is how I want my children to be raised. And it's not until after you have children that you realize that some of your opinions and some of your wants for your children begin to change. And that's okay. But I still think that it's important for me to have asked my husband a little more about children and how he wants to raise them and that sort of thing, right? In terms of the grandparents, how involved will they be, right, in the decision-making process as far as our children? So these are things that I didn't really ask my husband, and I wish that I would have. Now, it did turn out that things worked out pretty well between my husband and I. In terms of the number of children that we have and the decision-making process with other family members and so on and so forth. But I still think that it would have been pretty good if I would have asked more questions concerning children. So maybe that might be something that you want to talk to your significant other about before you get married. Number 3, do you change diapers? Okay, so this one is kind of a follow-up to number 2. Do you change diapers? Now, it's a very simple question, but it's one that I think that's worth asking. So this is not a question that I asked my husband prior to getting married, because in my mind, I just assumed, well, if we end up having children, then it makes sense, right, that you would be involved in the diaper changing process, responsibility, and that's actually just not true. Some men and even some women find changing diapers to be a very yucky responsibility, and it sure is. But if you and I have created this child, I think that you should be responsible for changing diapers just as much as I would be responsible for changing diapers. So that is a question that I wish that I would have asked my husband prior to getting married. Even if he's never had that experience before, like changing maybe a niece or a nephew or someone else, is he willing? Is he willing to say, hey, this is something that our children will need, right? This is a need of theirs. And is he willing to roll up his sleeves and get the job done? So I think that this is a question that is worth asking your significant other prior to getting married. Are you willing to change the diapers? So with number 1, number 2, and number 3, do you want to have children? Yes, he wanted to have children. And are you willing to wash dishes, change diapers? It was all good, right? I was pleasantly surprised. Whew. Here's where there came a bit of a change for us. This is something that I had, no idea about because I did not ask, and it did end up being an issue for my husband and I, and that is who is going to pay the bills. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about why that became an issue. Prior to getting married and being in my parents' home, I was the one that would pay, for example, my own credit card bill. And I remember my mother making such a big deal about making sure that, you pay your bill and you pay your bills on time because you don't want your credit to, to go south and that sort of thing. So I was very, very conscious of paying my bills, paying them on time so that I would have a good credit. And so when we got into our relationship, our marriage, I was like, automatically in my mind, I was just thinking, I'm paying all the bills because I did not trust him in that way. And it made sense that I didn't trust him because we had never been in a situation where we had to come together and pay bills together. So I didn't know how he was with that responsibility, and I did not want to find out. I was just like, what do you mean you're going to pay the bills? And he was like, yeah, I'll pay the bills. And I was like, no, you're not. I'm paying the bills. And he was like, no, that is my responsibility. That is something that I want to take on, and that's what I'm going to do. And I mean, it was a huge, huge argument. I'll never forget it. We were in a car driving somewhere, I forgot where, and it was just like a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was just like, this is not going to happen. I mean, I was literally shaking. I'll never forget it. I was literally shaking because there was this big disagreement, and I really felt like I should have been the one to do it. And like I said, the reason for it was because I was just thinking, if I do it, then I know for sure that the bills are paid. And if the bills are paid, then that means that my credit is still intact. It's still good. And I just could not fathom someone else taking care of that. So that is definitely one thing that I wish that I would have asked my husband from the beginning. Hey, who's paying the bills? How is this, how are you with paying bills? Just asking a little bit more if I was even interested, or even open to the idea of someone else paying the bills. So it ended up being that he won the argument and he ended up paying the bills, and he does an amazing job at it. He's never late. In fact, I'm so happy he pays the bills because that is not something that I'm interested in at all. So I'm grateful that he pays the bills. But that is something that you really want to talk to your significant other about, right? You want to make sure that the bills are paid. You want to make sure that your credit doesn't go south. You want to make sure that this is someone that understands how important it is to you to have the bills paid and paid on time. So that is one thing that I wish that I would have asked my husband prior to getting married. Number 5. Do you have credit card debt? This is not a question that I asked my husband, and I wish that I did. Now, it so happened to be that he didn't have any credit card debt, but what if he did? What if he had a whole lot of credit card debt, right? And then now we're in this marriage. Then a whole lot of other questions would come up, right? Is he taking care of this credit card debt on his own? Am I helping him with this credit card debt? And I think that with asking the question of whether or not your significant other has credit card debt, it'll also bring up some other questions, right? Things like, how does he handle his money? Is he a big saver or not? Is this something that he's working on? Also, do both you and him want to have the same bank account? Do you want to have separate bank accounts? Like, I think that it's a really great question because it opens up your mind, and it leads you to asking other questions that have to do with money. So that is a question that I wish that I would have asked my husband prior to getting married. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that some of these questions that I did not ask my husband are questions that you will ask your future wife, your future husband, so that you know where you stand, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that if they say one thing or if they say something else that you'll no longer be with them, or maybe it does mean that, right? Information is key because once you have it, then you're empowered to make better decisions. So glad that you were here with me for this video, and I will see you in my next. Bye.